Welcome to the Small Steps, Big Wins podcast. I'm dedicated to helping you take control of your life. Together, we'll explore practical tips, expert advice, and inspiring stories to help you overcome obstacles and achieve your goals. Making small changes is possible and can lead to big results. Are you ready? Let's go do this. Matt, welcome.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Glad you're here. So, with my guests, I just like to let them introduce themselves and start this story where they want, and we'll just go from there.
Sure. Yeah. So, Matt Joens, born and raised here in the Midwest, father of two. I've got a 10-year-old daughter named Skylar and a 8-year-old, almost 8-year-old son named Nolan. Been married to my wife Katie for coming up on 13 years, and so it's been fun. It's been great. It's been a wild ride. I work at W2, but then have a handful of passion projects along the way as well. A legacy in action, which we'll talk about a little bit later. And then I do some apartment and residential real estate investing as well.
And what's your W-2 then?
W2, I work for a smaller safety technology startup company based here out of West Des Moines. We do, let's see here, think about like environmental and ergonomic conditions, right? So understanding what an individual's heat stress looks like and ergonomics, how physically stressed are they, noise exposure, stuff like that. So I jumped
Oh,
on
cool.
4 years ago. I was employee number 7, and that's been another wild ride, the world, wild ride of startups. So
Get a little bit of everything. I just say it keeps life interesting,
it certainly
What
does.
what got you interested in the real estate in the first place? Because I find everybody has some small step story that usually like because nobody goes and buys an 18 unit complex right off the bat, right? Or at least
Yeah.
I don't know anybody who does.
Yeah, good question. I just remember vividly thinking, you know, whatever it was, 10 years ago, that I'm not sure I subscribed to the whole, work for 40 years, save up in a 401k, and just hope you have enough by the time you're 65. I'm like, that's if that's the American dream, I don't know whose dream that was, but it's certainly not mine. And so it took some time to realize that it's okay for me to have my own dreams. I don't have to just be a cog in the wheel and keep chugging along. So I started doing that just in hopes of, you know, breaking out of the system sooner or later. And I'm not there yet, but again, sooner or later we'll get there. So I'm an engineer by trade. And so I first started looking at it and just, I again vividly remember the day that the whole idea of leverage entered my mind. I was like, wait, I can buy a $200,000 house and let somebody else pay for it over the next 15, 20, 30 years. And then I have an appreciating asset that somebody else has paid for. I mean, it's just all of a sudden something clicked in my head. And that's when I really started getting into the Rich Dad Poor Dad and all the Robert Kiyosaki stuff. So that was the first time the idea of, you know, having again an appreciating asset versus a fancy car really
Mhm.
came across my mind. Again,
Yeah. What did you think was going to be hard about doing real estate the way you're doing it and then turned out to be easy? And what did you think was would have been easy but really was hard?
boy, let's see here. I certainly thought, this last 18 unit apartment complex is probably the best example because I realized pretty quick now that I've got two kids, 10 and 8, I can't I can't spend my time there every night, gutting the house, painting, putting in
Mhm.
faucets. Like that's just not in the deck of cards anymore for me. So we bought this 18 unit apartment complex and thought, like, we'll just put the cash up front and then we'll bring in a management company and we'll sign on the dotted line and we'll just collect mailbox money. And that's not how it goes. If you learn
Mm.
really quickly that if you're not managing the property yourself, you're managing the managers and asking, what are you doing to get these vacant units replaced? And like, do we really need to do all of this when it comes to flipping and turning a unit? And tell me how you're figuring out,
Mm.
like where's the consistency from apartment to apartment? And anyway, it's been a big learning curve that I didn't expect. I really thought it was just you're hired, send me the check every month, and that's
Mm.
that's it.
And then it would yeah, I think that's passive investing, if I'm not
Yes,
mistaken.
yes, very different, very different.
You could do that way. What did you think was hard that turned out to be easy?
Um, boy, that's a good question too. I don't know that I would say anything has been super easy. Everybody always says, don't do partnerships.
Mm,
Everybody says that, they go bad. And I'm not going to say that it's been smooth sailing the whole time, but this group of guys that I'm with, we've had the ability to really communicate well through everything and to just get done what needs to get done and not let any drama get in the way of accomplishing our task. So I am
yes.
still a fan of partnerships. I would choose them over doing them individually. So
So, yes, I hear your partnerships have really good communication and you take out the drama.
yeah.
So, I think if you do that, I think with anything, right?
And
If you
and
do
we've just been friends for so
communicate,
long that we
yeah.
know that, like, no matter what the amount of money is, we're not going to let that get in the way of our friendship. This is first and foremost. It always has been. It always will be. If we don't do
Mhm.
another house again together, that's fine. If that's what we decide, but we're in this now, and let's go until we're done.
No, that's some good advice there you
Yeah,
have on that with the communication, the no drama, and just making sure that you guys are all on the same page and having that history and having that rapport before going into a partnership. Because I've heard that partnerships are often like a marriage. You
very
better
much
make
so.
sure you know who you're partnering up with because you're in for the long haul.
Hmm. Yep,
So,
absolutely.
I wanna talk about your passion project,
Yeah,
A Legacy in Action. So, let's get into that. I checked out the website, it was really cool. I want you to talk about what it is, why you started, who it's for, how it works, and anything in between.
sure. So the backstory, I've got a daughter. I've got a 10-year-old daughter, and probably 4 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, I was sitting there thinking, I thought, man, I feel like there's a lot of things that my parents didn't necessarily pass along that it would be really nice to know. It's not like they intentionally left everything out. It's just they just didn't tell me about some of this stuff. And so I went to Walmart and I bought a little journal and I said, I'm just gonna, for one, if I have some advice, I'm gonna document that and I'm gonna write my daughter a journal entry every month. And whether it's, hey, here's a piece of advice for you when you're 20, or it's just, hey, this is a really cool thing that you and I did together, or over the last month, I've really seen you grow in this area. I just decided that I was going to document her life every month and then just have this really cool special journal to give to her, when she left the house or got married or whatever. I haven't decided on a when to give it to her, but I've got 8 more years to do that at the very least. So, but anyway, I started off strong every month, writing her an entry, and then it became every other month, and then it was down to once a quarter, and I was like, man, I really want to do this. Like, this is something I really want to be intentional with, having something to give to my daughter and say, I've been paying attention throughout your life. And I want you to have this. I want you to see this. And I want you to be able to look back on it when you're my age, and say, well, what was my dad going through when I was 10, right? Maybe she has a 10-year-old at that time and is kind of wondering the same things. And so anyway, I just got to thinking, like, how can I make this? How can I prompt myself? I need a prompt, something to remind me. And so I said, I'm going to create something. I'm going to try and automate this. And so I created this platform, this texting platform, where I preload a handful of questions. You can get, I actually have it set up to get one every 3 weeks. So
Mm,
I get a text message once every 3 weeks, just with a prompting question. Tell me about a daddy-daughter date that you guys have been on lately, or tell me about something that you see often and it reminds you of your daughter or your son, right? And so that's the product, and the beauty of it is, instead of having a physical journal that I'm really fairly restricted on when I can write on that, right? I can write on it in the morning before my kids get up, or I can write in it after they go to bed. But if I get a text message, I can respond to a text message when I'm sitting in a waiting room waiting for an appointment or something. I can
mm,
respond to a text message anytime. And
mhm,
so, again, I created this platform. I text myself, I respond to the text, it logs it in the system. And then at the end of the year,
mm.
there's all of my answers. I pull them out, put them in a book. And by the way, if you're watching on YouTube or Spotify, that's what it looks like right there. Just a little picture book, front and back. And I've got all the questions and answers, pictures inside the book. But
So you can text the pictures too,
text the
then
pictures,
not
yeah.
just text the pictures as well as the text itself. Oh,
Yeah.
that's cool.
Yeah, and,
Okay.
and some of the questions even prompt you for pictures, right? Tell me about one of your favorite
Mhm.
dates that you've been on, or times that you spent just one on one with your kid, right? And send a picture if you've got one. So we prompt you for that as well. But so then at the end of the year, right, I can just compile it, create the book, And then again, so not only have I gone through the year of just being intentional, and what these texts cause you to do is they cause you to be more present when you're with your kids. They cause you to be more intentional and notice what's going on, notice how they're growing, what they're learning, how they're getting better at something you've challenged them with. And then again, you get to the end of the year, and what I did is I took my daughter out on a little daddy daughter date, and I sat her down across the table, and we went to her favorite restaurant, and I said, I wrote you a book over the last 12 months. I wrote you a book, and I want to go over it with you. I want you to see this. I want you to see, here's the questions I asked myself. Here's what I observed about you. And I was blown away at just how much it hit her, how much she loved it. I mean, she's 9 at the time, just almost in tears, just looking at it, and
Oh,
frequently comes and grabs it and says, hey, let's look at this again. Let's go over this again.
yeah. How did that make you feel to create something like that for
Uh,
her?
yeah.
What was going on in your mind at that time?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good question. It was overwhelming for me as well, just to again to be able to see the joy and the impact, and just also kind of realize how much we just get busy with the busy culture of America, and we forget to slow down, and we forget to take opportunities to be intentional with our kids. We forget to pull them aside and tell them what we're proud of them for. We forget to encourage them and come alongside them and help them through challenges. And so it really, I mean, that's ultimately what inspired me to make it a something bigger, right? Not just for me, but it's like if I want this, if I'm having this feeling, and my daughter's seeing this, I wonder if there are other parents out there, folks, dads out there that are interested in this. So yeah,
Wow,
that was it.
that's really cool. How did your experiences growing up then influence you to have this desire to leave a legacy? Do you have, like, examples or something that you kinda
Yeah.
remember other than your parents? Was there anything else that you could think of that you had that moment where you realized, "Wait a minute, I could do this for my kids too," besides the journaling?
Yeah. So there was a guy that came into my life when I was probably 18 years old, 19 years old, and he was a mentor to me in my faith and in business, and I was in school at the time, and so as a student, but he was again probably outside of my parents, probably the most impactful person on my life, and it was simply because he cared, right? He was at the time, I think he was in his 70s, and he just had set out on a mission. He said, "You know what? When I was busy building a business when I was a dad, and I missed out on a lot of my kids' life, and so I'm gonna, not only am I gonna pour into my family, my grandkids, but I'm gonna pour into, other young men as they're growing up, and just encourage them to take the higher path, and to again to pour into their kids and to pour into their friends and to make a difference in the world." And so Chuck was his name, and so he really came alongside me. And every time he called, every time I called, it was just a very, you know, very little small talk. I mean, very
Mhm.
intentional. Tell me what's going on in your life. Tell me what your struggles are. Tell me what's going well. Let's celebrate those together. Let's work through the challenges. And so he was a tremendous example of what it looked like to be intentional with another person or in a
Mm.
relationship in general.
Mhm. It's beautiful when, whether you believe God, universe, or whatever, brings
Mhm.
somebody into your life to enrich it in such a way that you wouldn't have seen yourself. And it sounds like you just took in and just soaked up everything that Chuck was sharing with you and teaching you and showing you about life and about what he went through as a parent and passed
100%.
on that to you. And how wonderful it is when we have those mentors and they come and go. Sometimes they stick around for a lot of years and sometimes they're only around for a short period of time. But whatever it is, it's just enough to leave an
Mhm.
indelible mark on us in some way. So, getting back to your passion project, then, which I love it. So, it's a year, is it just a year long
Yep,
or
12
is
months.
it something that just 12 months? No, I could see somebody signing up, like, on their child's birthday
Yeah,
and running it through instead of going from, like, January 1st to December 31st, they could, sign up on whenever their birth date is and then keep a running log through that year
yep.
and do it from and I'm thinking of new parents too. I don't know if you did this, but when I was a new mom with my firstborn, I had a son, and I documented everything. There was like 3,000 pictures, and you wrote everything down. And I've got these journals, and this is what it was like for you every month.
Yep,
And
yep,
then the after the first year died down a little bit, but we still kept it up. Well, the second baby came along a couple years later, and then the pictures went in half, and
yep.
the journal entries were once every 6 months. And then by the time the third one came along, you barely remembered that you had a third child and what their name was and when they were born. So not alone being able to document and take a picture, you were lucky you remembered you had, at least that was my experience anyway,
Yeah.
by the
Oh,
time that third
totally,
one came.
totally.
So I can see where what you've created. I love the intentionality. I mean, that just is threaded through the whole thing. You get that text message, you jot something down, and then you just collect this through the course of the year. I think it's brilliant. And for those who didn't see it on camera, go check out the website or at least watch the video, because the pictures alone are gorgeous. It's actually a really nice book that's put together.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, sure,
Yeah, and
sure.
I mean, I guess my vision for it is I'm going to continue this every year, right? And then
Mhm.
again, whenever I give it to her, whether it's 18 and she's left the house, or she's 20 something and getting married, or has her first kid, whatever it is, I'm going to have a stack of these things to give to
Mhm.
her. And here's your life from age 10. Here's everything, maybe not everything. Here's a lot of what I've noticed. Here's some of the really important things that I've picked up on and noticed in you again over these last 18 years, or whatever it might be. So I'm excited
Now,
for that day too, to just give her that as a wedding present or something, right?
yeah, I think that's just a great idea, because I'm thinking of my own journals and they're sitting in boxes, and my kids don't have them yet, but they're
Hmm.
certainly not consistent. So not only are you intentional, but you're also consistent on it as well.
Yeah.
Now, the questions that you ask,
Hmm.
are they specific to maybe like age frame? So do people have the opportunity to say, this is going to be for a child 0 to 3 or in a certain age, and then you tailor the questions? How are the questions structured?
That's a great question. Right now, there's no format. I try to just make them so that they are applicable again for a 3-year old all the way up to a 16,
Goodness.
17-year old, right? And the goal is that they could be for a mom or a dad. They're not just for dads. It's for moms as well, who want to have the ability to again document and write about their kids. But and again, this is only 6 months old, so it could this is version one. There could be an iteration where there is a chance to choose. But one thing that I try to do at the very beginning is say, like, guys, this is just a prompt, right? If you don't want to answer the question I send you, and you have something on your mind that you want, just put it in there, and that's what'll go
Mhm.
in your book, right? This is just, if you need a reminder, if you need a prompt, some help, here's a question. But otherwise, this is your book, so you do with it what you like.
What's the most surprising thing that you've encountered in the last 6 months since you started?
As far as just creating it goes,
Creating or anything with the business side?
yeah. I've realized how difficult it is to create
Mm,
something like this. In theory, again, it sounds very simple, but there are so many systems that have to come together and talk. And I have a friend that kind of mentors me in business. And when I first told him about this, he said, "I challenge you to get this out in 90 days." And I was like, "Okay, I can
mm.
do this." And I think it was actually more like 150 or 120 days or something like that. But it was a challenge, and I'm still facing challenges just with the CRM and getting everything to again talk to each other, and then once I get that all done, I've got to figure out how to automate it, because I can handle most of this now where there's not a ton of users. But if I
Mhm.
get to a point where there's 1,000 people or 10,000 people doing this on
Yeah.
an annual basis, like, I'm not going to be able to keep up. So then we got to start bringing in automation and
Well, for an engineer and a software person, I would think so, right? So we're talking all the back end things that go on with the
yes.
coding and making sure that this system talks to this one. Yeah, I could see that. I
Yeah.
have
And
a math squirrel brain, so, and I, so while you're talking, I'm thinking about, yeah, I know it. what's going on with that CRM and capturing all that information and having to aggregate it and then putting it into a final product at the end of the year or whenever it's supposed to be produced. Yeah,
Yep.
I could see that. But you
And
know what? Growth is a good thing, right? So if you're having that struggle now, that means people are starting to use it and you've got something that people can leave a legacy,
yeah,
which
absolutely.
is really important, and it's easy to do too. That's what I'm pulling out of our conversation. It's intentional, but it's also easy for them to do because you mentioned in the beginning about not being able to carry a journal around or having that time where you actually have to sit down and do that.
Yep,
So,
absolutely. Absolutely.
mm,
So, but
yeah.
yeah, the whole idea of a legacy, right? I mean, the reason I
Mm,
named it a legacy in action is, everybody's going to leave a legacy, right? But you look at the people whose legacies you really want to emulate. Michael Jordan, Warren Buffett. Pick your famous person out there. Like they didn't leave that legacy by accident. Michael
mhm,
Jordan wasn't just accidentally the one of the best basketball players of all time. You watch the documentary and you realize how much work he actually put into it. Like there is a incredible amount of intentionality that has to come behind a positive legacy. And so again, just making that easier for a parent is my goal.
yeah, and we don't have to be Michael Jordan. So
No.
that's the beauty about it. Anybody can do this. You don't have to be somebody special, but you'll have something. Oh, you know what? Would you encourage like grandparents as well, not just parents? Are you
Yeah.
gonna branch
Again,
out to grandparents?
anybody can do it, and that's another good point. I could, for example, I could sign my 72-year-old dad up for this product, and
Mhm,
again, something that he can pass along to me and I can have forever. But I got to thinking about that a little more. I was like, well, for every story that my 72-year-old dad remembers, like how many has he
mhm,
forgotten?
mm,
So, right, again, how can we just be more in the moment right now,
yeah,
remembering this stuff, documenting, capturing this stuff, so that again, we kind of have this stack or this big time capsule to give to our kids
mhm.
when they're older. So,
Yeah, I just love the simplicity of what you've created that in the form of a text, anybody can just be prompted, answer it right then and there, and it stays on their phone until they delete it, so that
yep,
it's a reminder.
yep,
And
absolutely.
that's I think that's just awesome. I'm very excited
Yeah,
for
thanks.
for where all the different places that this could go. What if you could it so if you could go back in time, if you could go back in time to your younger self and deliver a message, what would that be and why? Or better question is if you were the 80-year-old Matt, what would 80-year-old Matt
Mm,
tell today Matt?
yeah, yeah. I feel like at 38 years old, I just turned 38 a few weekends ago, and at 38 years old, I am just now starting to chase my dream and chase my passion rather than, you know, again, falling into the system and just, hey, I was good at math and science, I should probably go be an engineer. Um, I was never that passionate about engineering. I just knew it paid well, and I knew I was good at math and science. And so that's what I would tell myself is I would say just slow down and think about what it is that you really care about. Think about the legacy that you want to leave, which can be hard asking yourself as a 18 or young
Mhm.
20-year-old something, but you know, it- take your time and always, no matter what you do. So say you do go get an engineering job, that's fine, but live below your means because there's probably going to be a time where something comes up, some sort of a passion project comes up that you want to chase, and you have to have the ability and the means to go and do it. So
What are some other things that you do that are intentional with your kids, and your wife too, in your family?
yeah, so my daughter and I have daddy daughter dates scheduled. Like we sat down at the beginning of the year and we made a list of, I don't know what it was, 12, 14 different things that we wanted to do. And we scheduled a daddy daughter date for the third Saturday of every month. And we go everything from, we've got a rock climbing gym that we really like to go to. We've got mini golfing. We'll go to a movie. We'll go, I've taken her to a fancy dinner as a 10-year-old. Like, this is how I want you to
Mhm.
be treated. This is how I want you. This is what you should be expecting. Just knowing that you're 10 now, but at some point, some guy is going to come ask you out on a date, and this is what this is the way that you need to be treated, right? Open the door for her,
Mm,
ladies first ordering and all of that, right? Just some of these really simple things that she doesn't appreciate now as a 10-year-old, but hopefully she remembers when
mhm,
she's 15, 16 years old and somebody asks her to prom.
mhm.
So,
That's really nice. What a great experience for her to just get used to what it's like to being treated like a lady.
mm,
So I love the intentionality about that. And you said your son is 8?
my son's
Yes?
8. Yep,
Yeah.
he's
So what are some cool things with him? And do you do the
he's
same? Like, do you have your father, son not maybe I wouldn't say dates, they're
yeah,
probably they're probably adventure zones.
we call them dude dates, but
Dates,
yeah,
there we go.
yeah, and
That's
there
great. I
he's
never heard of dude dates before.
yeah, I don't know, but he's a lot more simple. That kid, I'm a big outdoorsman. I love to hunt and fish and ride my bike, and he luckily he's taken that after me, and so he's perfectly happy. We'll go to the lake and we'll fish. We'll go. There's a few little trails that we'll go mountain bike on. But that's one thing. That's a conversation that I just had with my wife. It's a lot harder for me to show him, any sort of sacrifice. Like taking him fishing is not much of a sacrifice. I love to go fishing myself. But like my daughter, when she wants to go watch the Barbie movie or whatever, that's a little bit more of a sacrifice on my end. And so we can just sometimes we just very open and honestly have the conversation that I I will go watch this movie, but I'll go watch it because I love you and because I know that that's what you're
Mhm,
really excited about. With my son, on the
mhm.
other hand, that's it's a little tougher just because he likes to do so many of the things that I like to do as well. So
Sacrifice there.
not a lot of sacrifice, but we
It'll
still have a
show
ton.
up one day.
Yeah,
I'm sure.
yeah, yeah. But we have a ton of
I'm
fun
sure I'm
together.
sure it will. I mean, and then you're making these memories that they're going to remember years and years later. It's
Mhm.
very surprising. Like I ask my kids now on the back end, "Hey, what's one thing that you remember, or a few things you remember from childhood?" And that was actually my present one year for Christmas. I said, "I want you guys to write me a letter," and I gave them two or three prompts, like, what's the one thing you remember that you and I did together
Mhm.
when you were younger, and what's one thing you remember as a family? What's a funny moment? I gave him a couple of those. I said, "Here, answer that and then send it to me in a letter." I said,
Fun.
"That was good enough for me that year."
Yeah, and I'll bet it surprises you some of the
So
things that they remember.
oh, it
Like,
does.
we
Yeah.
we went on a camping trip last year. We live in central Iowa, and we drug a camper up to northern Minnesota, and I planned out. I'm a planner, so I planned out all these really cool hikes that we're going to go do along the North Shore, and it's just beautiful country up there. And we're in the car driving home after the 3 or 4 days up there. Like, yeah, guys, what was your favorite part? And they're like, the swimming pool at the campground. Really? But it just kind of shows
From
like,
the eyes through children,
oh
though.
yeah, oh yeah,
They don't see what adults see.
no, and
It's
that's okay.
very s yeah, yeah, that's right. It is. It's very okay. They'll remember. They'll
Yes.
remember. You'd be surprised what they remember.
Mhm. Yep.
Especially
Absolutely.
when you ask them later on the stuff that they come up with.
Yep.
But it's fun.
Yep.
Parenting's fun, that's for sure.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, so intentional with your kids, I love it, and that they they are gonna appreciate what it is that you're doing. So, what's one thing you wish I would have asked about what you do that I forgot, or a topic you wanted to cover, and how would you answer that?
Yeah, you mentioned a book at the very beginning, and one book that I've read recently that has been huge and just helping me get this whole project off the ground was the Dan Sullivan and Ben Hardy book called Who Not How. And again, being that engineer by trade, when I face a problem, my goal is like, oh, I'll just go figure it out. But if I would have taken that approach to all of this and figuring out how to build a landing page and then how to integrate a payment system and have that all funnel into my CRM and how to then get notifications and build out this automated, texting string. If I would have done that all myself, we wouldn't be having this conversation right now because it wouldn't be done yet. And it'd be it'd be half as far along. It'd be a
Mhm,
12-month window before anything actually got at least. And so that was a really powerful book for me, and just realizing that you know the name of the game is speed in some of this, and
mhm,
the money that you spend hiring somebody to get it out there and to get an MVP in place, um, is more valuable than that money is actually worth. So just pay
How
it.
did
And
you find your who's?
um, yeah, great question. Just a fair amount of networking, personal friends, and having a network of people that I could say, hey, here's the problem. Here's what I'm dealing with. Does anybody know a website developer? Does anybody know how to, got a good recommendation on a CRM that has an SMS platform built into it? And just kind of got lucky with having the right group of people around me to really
Nice.
help me through, because that's again something I never dealt with.
Wow. I love it. I
Yeah,
love it. So you got the book is The Who Not How. I know
without how.
Rich Dad Poor Dad was
Mm.
the catalyst that started the real estate. Was there any other one thing that had a significant impact on you that you would want to share?
Um, so I'm currently reading the newest Dan Sullivan and Ben Hardy book, 10x is easier than
10X.
2x. 10, yeah, yeah, you're very familiar with it, it
It's
sounds
a
like.
great book.
It is.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I read it.
yeah, and again, I've had conversations with my W-2 boss about it, and having, like, again, I'm in sales, and so having a conversation with him is like, here's what I'm learning, and here's how I'm applying it in my W-2, and the clients and the prospects that I choose to pursue. We're a startup. It's a lot easier for us to, let's shoot for the 10x, and if we miss, we'll probably still hit the 2x. But
Mhm.
here's how I'm taking that approach. It changes every decision that you make, it seems like. And I'm constantly
Yeah.
thinking, again, is this a 10x decision or is this a 2x decision? So
What's one way you've implemented that into your W-2 where you took it to a 10X decision?
yeah, again, just in the clientele that we work with.
Mm,
So again, our product is a wearable safety device. The goal is to get it on the arm of as many people as possible, because then we can impact and we can understand what their day looks like, and we can intervene when we recognize, like, hey, that person's been exposed to a lot of heat, or that person's been exposed to a lot of noise, or they're having a really physical day, they're going to hurt their shoulder. So
mm.
I can only deploy so many devices in a mom and pop machine shop, but if we're looking at these big Fortune 500 global equipment manufacturers that have 100 locations across the United States, that's a lot more potential. That's a lot bigger bang for my buck, if you will, and so
Mhm.
that's who we're choosing to chase.
Matt, well, I wanna thank you for your time.
This has been awesome. Thank you, Sue.
So Oh, you're welcome. So as we're coming to a close, what's one small step that somebody can do today that's gonna help them change their tomorrow?
Yeah, don't be afraid to want what you want. And that was from another book as well. I think it was a Ben Hardy book. But don't be afraid to want what you want, and then put it on paper, write it down, and start telling people about it. Start talking about it. Tell your spouse, and then tell your friends, and then tell the world, because that's how things get started. That's how the ball gets rolling in your mind, and you start taking action on it. And but if you don't tell anybody, if it just constantly sits in your head and spins around, chances of it actually going anywhere and doing anything with it are far less.
That's great advice. Oh, so now I'm curious, what's one thing that was on your vision board that you wrote down and you wrote it and you're like, "I don't know if this is gonna come to pass," and then it did?
Oh man, so this is hilarious. And I just built my vision board probably 6 months ago, and since high school, I have wanted a Jeep Wrangler. And I finally got to the point where I said, you know what? If I can find one in this range, it's fine. Like, and I put my vision board out there with this beautiful Jeep Wrangler, and I thought, eventually someday I'll have that. But now I just want a Jeep Wrangler. It doesn't matter what it is. And
Mhm.
I found one. I found one just 3 weeks ago, and it is exactly the Jeep that is on my vision board, and it was in the
I
price
love
range
it.
that I was. So yeah, it was just crazy.
I love it.
Yeah.
And I'm sure if we had like all day, you and I could go back and forth on small stories where we spoke something out
Hmm.
loud.
Hmm.
You just put it out loud and then it comes to pass.
Yeah.
It's very interesting. And I wasn't really aware of vision boards and
No, me
speaking
either.
out things that you want until maybe, I would say maybe about a year ago.
Same here.
Prior to that, it was a very foreign idea for me. Even to now, I sometimes have a tough time with the vision board. I'm like, is that too big? Or, maybe I'm not going big enough. And the funny thing is that, and I don't know if this has happened to you or not. I wrote a vision and put it down, and then I tucked the vision away, and I forgot that I wrote it because it was really the first one that I did. I pulled it out 2 months later and realized that starting a podcast was on there.
Awesome.
So that's like there's a scary power attached to writing down what you want and throwing it out there and waiting to see what happens.
Mhm. Absolutely. It's been fun.
Yeah. So yeah, it has. Well, Matt, thank you. How can people find you, reach out to you, look up the wonderful, your
Yeah.
wonderful website on leaving a legacy, and it
Yeah.
is a legacy in action.
That's right. And that's the website. It's just www.alegacyinaction.com. Come find me there.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. Well, again, thanks, Matt. Thanks for your time.
Yeah. Thanks, Sue. Have a good evening.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Small Steps, Big Wins podcast. I value your time with me, and I seek to make every moment count. In order to make lasting change in your life, listening is usually not enough. So I want to ask you, what practical steps are you going to put into action today as a result of listening to this podcast? Remember, any step, any action, no matter how small, starts your journey to a big win. And if you're not sure where to get started, reach out to me and let's have a conversation. Until next time, love yourself, then love others. Peace.